Hello, lovelies, and welcome back for Season 2, Episode 1.
First one of the season.
First one of the season. Obviously, as you have probably guessed, we are not skipping any weeks. We are just rolling in. It's just 12 is a lot easier to deal with than 52. For this episode, we are going to be talking about a certain road. And it's obviously not Bragg Road because that was actually Season 1.
Yeah.
So do you know what road we're talking about? Just a gandering guess?
Is it in this area?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if we're talking about a road that's in this area that I'm guessing is supposed to be haunted, then there's only two roads to my knowledge that there is, and that's one is Bragg, obviously. Mm-hmm. The other one is a road called Sarah Jane Road.
Right. So we are talking about Sarah Jane Road, and I have actually a couple different accounts on it, and I think through the power of research, I can tell you who I'm pretty sure this road is and the story is about.
Well, let's get into it then.
All right. So the legend has it that it was a young mother named Sarah Jane, obviously, who hung herself after walking on this very road when her baby accidentally fell into the Neches River and was swept away. It is said that the magical powers of a nearby ancient Indian burial mound has kept her spirit trapped on Earth, and if you drive or walk by this road after dark, you may spot this ghostly figure searching for her lost baby.
Really? That's not the story I always heard.
Yeah, so like I said, there are many versions of the story. That's just one, and honestly, that reminds me a lot of the Spanish La Lloronas.
Right.
Who, she, on the typical La Llorona, she drowns her kids.
Right.
Which this story kind of reminds me of. And it also kind of reminds me of A Lady in White, because some of the versions have her dressed in white. Let me see if I can...
And you get that. Like, for example, we've talked in the past about, there are at least a dozen stories about Goatman from different towns and different places. You've got totally different stories of La Llorona. You've got, Lady in White, like that. There's a bunch of different stories. And from the episode with the vampire and the Goatman stuff, from the vampire part, we've learned that through oral history, like through people passing down these stories and telling them, that a lot of them kind of get mixed and intertwined.
Right.
So that's what I think happened here as well.
And that's actually interesting that you said that, because if you look up on Wikipedia, which we know how amazing Wikipedia is.
Right.
At the time, I remember my teachers used to say, don't use Wikipedia because it's unreliable.
We couldn't cite it as a source on our papers.
But, that's all we use nowadays. Anyways, if you look up Crybaby Bridge,
right,
that is a nickname given to some bridges in the United States, all the way from Kentucky, Ohio, and Maryland, as well as Texas, obviously. In Texas, on Wikipedia, there are 3 separate ones that it talks about, including the one here in Port Neches, which is the Sarah Jane Bridge.
Right.
Which is on Sarah Jane Road.
Yeah.
According to Wikipedia, it is said that the bridge got the name from which a baby of the same name was thrown into the alligator-infested water by a man who had murdered the child's mother. It is said Sarah Jane can be heard crying from the water when one stands on the bridge on a hot summer night, like now, because it's hot. The child's mother, a headless ghost wandering the woods nearby, can also be heard whispering Sarah Jane as she searches for the forest with a lantern. The legendary Sarah Jane is quite possibly the person I'm going to be talking about. So it actually tells you who they think it is. And I'm not going to tell you who exactly that is just yet. But even Wikipedia cites that it's probably this person.
So I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know if you want me to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you my story that I've always heard growing up.
So it might be the next one that we're going to be talking about.
Is it the one about the Civil War?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then this is the story that I heard growing up.
So it is said that she went to the river and placed her infant in a wicker basket. Then Sarah hid the baby under the bridge to protect the child. Sarah made her way back down the road to her home and waited for the Union soldiers to arrive. Obviously, this was during the war. If you don't know, American Civil War, Union, Confederate, South was Confederate, North was Union. In case you didn't know that. Some people don't know that. We have some people that are listening from overseas. They might not know that. So I just want to real quickly clear that up. Her husband was away fighting in the war as a Confederate soldier. So she knew that if the Union soldiers, which are the enemy soldiers, were passing through the area, she feared that they would kill her and her baby because of being sympathizers
Right.
of the South. So after the soldiers passed by, she went back to the bridge to retrieve her baby, but unfortunately the baby was nowhere to be found. The tide had risen and carried the baby away downstream. Sarah Jane searched through the night down the banks of the Neches River for hours in hopes of finding her baby safe and sound. Neighbors could hear Sarah Jane's screams as she searched, and she kept running up to people, weeping pitifully and asking, "Have you seen my baby?" Grief-stricken and unable to find her child, Sarah Jane walked back to the bridge and hung from the wooden beams beneath it. When people found her body, they saw a message scratched into the wood under the bridge that read, "Where is my baby?"
Right.
As the story goes, if you go out to Sarah Jane Road at night and stand by the water's edge, you can still hear Sarah Jane's baby crying off in the distance. Some people claim they've spotted a noose hanging beneath the bridge, and others say they've also seen Sarah Jane's ghost searching along the side of the river for the infant child which she lost many years ago. So again, that's going back to the kind of sounds like La Lloronas.
Right. And another thing is, talking about, because there are several stories where they talk about them, people driving across the bridge and actually picking up someone, a woman in white, and taking them as far as they can, and then she just disappeared. Like, so, and that right there would make sense with the story you just said. That's what I had always heard.
Right, which also goes back to the lady in white kind of a story.
Correct.
Usually the lady in whites will stop people who are traveling down certain roads or certain areas and say, can I get a ride?
Right.
And then they disappear, or they make it to their destination. When you turn around, they're not there.
Right.
I mean, that's just a very basic version of Lady in Whites.
Okay.
The last version of the story includes Sarah Jane being a lady pirate, possibly John Lafitte's girlfriend. Jean Lafitte, which we were actually going to talk about later on, is a very famous pirate who actually was around this area. So that part, it's more believable because he was in this area. He actually had a house in Galveston, which we will talk about later.
Right. And another part of that is that if there is no John Lafitte, there is no this area in parts of it.
Right.
Because he settled here. So.
And, I forgot this one. There's another account that says she was attacked by a group of bandits, and that's why she placed her child in some weeds near the bridge. And again, when she went to go find the child, he was not there. And again, she hung herself. Some are saying she hung herself on the actual bridge, and others are saying she hung herself on a tree near the bridge. So there's still even there some discrepancies of where she actually hung herself or if she did.
Right.
So as I'm saying, there's a lot of versions to this story.
Oh, yeah.
And it just really depends on which one you've heard.
Yeah. And everybody hears a different version growing up. Like, I have people that have come up to me and talked about some of the stories we've told on here, and they're like, "Oh, well, I've never even heard that version. Like, this is what I heard."
Right.
So
So we really didn't talk about it, but Sarah Jane Road is in Port Neches, Texas.
It is.
That is about how far away would you say from us? Minutes?
About 30 minutes.
About 30 minutes?
Yeah.
So it's very close to home. We've all heard of this bridge growing up. When I asked on Facebook, hey, what's something I should cover? Everybody said Sarah Jane Road.
Right.
It's obviously very embedded into us in this area. Some say it's full of, crap. Others say they've experienced some stuff.
It's a very big tourist destination for people who go to Mid-County.
Right. Kind of like Bragg Road for our area in Saratoga.
Right.
Those two roads are like the, if you're a teen and you go, you get your car, like you go to these places.
And not only that, but as I've seen on YouTube, TV even, countless number of ghost hunters have been to Sarah Jane Road.
Right.
So.
And we've said it before, the ghost shows, some of them are better than others. Some will obviously find everything and anything under the sun.
Right.
Because obviously they're in it for entertainment and for the money, while others will, they're very skeptical.
And that's something about us, if anything, we're really bad ghost hunters because we kind of disprove stuff more than we do actually
Yeah, so I think it was the Pines,
Yeah.
when we covered that one, we could find absolutely nothing on it.
Right.
No deaths whatsoever. Supposedly there were some, but through research, we honestly couldn't even say that anybody was there. I mean, they're quite possibly, like we said, the two managers
Right.
put their heart and soul into it, so that makes a little bit more sense that they're there. But as far as like anyone actually dying in the Pines, we could find nothing.
Right. And that's a big thing that we do before we do any of these shows is we do the research first.
Yes.
Like that's the big part.
Which brings us into who quite possibly Sarah Jane is and why she was crying over a baby and, how did she actually die? And I told you at first I could find nothing on this
Yeah.
because I was like, who is Sarah Jane? Who's Sarah Jane? Finally, after digging, I have found out who Sarah Jane was.
Oh yeah?
So the most likely person for this road is named Sarah Jane Sweeney Staffen Block. Okay, so
Sarah Jane Block.
right.
Okay.
Her maiden name, I believe, was Sweeney, but
Right.
then, married to Block. She was born in Louisiana and moved to Nederland in 1906. After moving to Nederland, Sarah Jane married into the Block family in 1919, who was one of the founding families in Port Neches.
I was about to say, if you know anything about Mid County or Nederland in general, that last name should be recognizable.
Right, and actually, she was the mother of Mr. W.T. Block, who was a well-known East Texas historian. Like, he can tell you about that area better
Yeah.
than anyone can.
Yeah.
So that was his mother. Sarah's name has been long associated with this road, but crazy enough, she actually didn't die. There was no baby that passed away there, and she was not a part of Confederacy or, she was actually, from what I've read, in all accounts, a pretty sweet lady.
Yeah.
And she actually died June 12th, 1983 in Nederland, which actually makes her 98, I believe, when she passed away.
Right.
So
she wasn't a young lady.
obviously not this lady in white who keeps
Right.
roaming around looking for a baby. She lived a long, healthy life.
Right.
And she was buried in the Oak Bluff Memorial Park, which is actually, so that region was a part of her and her husband's land.
Right.
Like, they owned that.
Yeah.
Which I believe is why they named that road Sarah Jane Road, because, they used to be owners there.
Yeah.
They owned a large chunk of land.
That makes sense. And that, the thing about it is, and this is what I want to bring to everybody's attention, once again, this idea of why did they call it Sarah Jane Road? Well, more than likely, some of these people didn't do their research and didn't look at why they named the road what it was called. They named this road, to me, in dedication, I don't know this to be true, but in dedication to the Block family, that, and then you hear of this ghost story. So I believe if it happened, if it was real, I believe that the woman that it happened to, her name was not Sarah Jane. I believe they got that completely wrong. I think it was something else. They just associate that because of the name of the road.
What happened was, from what I can gather from a website, actually WTBlock.com, which, he would be the man to know.
Yeah.
A reporter just heard the name and kind of just ran with it and printed this ghost story, and it kind of stuck with everybody.
Right.
And he himself, Mr. Block, said several times, I'm not even sure why this story is continuously going on, because my mom lived to be 98.
Yeah.
She was a sweet lady. She, she worked her butt off for her family, and, there was no hanging herself or anything like that.
Yeah.
She lived a long, healthy life.
Right. Which, shame on that reporter.
Yeah, and I tried to actually find that article of, where this all first began, because I was like, I just want to see this article that, instilled so much fear and, created this phenomenon, and I could not find that article.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where exactly it is. I believe they said that it was in Port Neches' newspaper, but I could not myself find it.
Yeah. So you see what can be done with just a little research. This is just, if you're covering something, make sure you do your research first.
Right.
Because this to me, it put kind of a damper on this family's name, like, because now everybody thinks that Sarah Jane is,
Well, I mean, I
you
guess
know,
the semi good part is nobody automatically thinks Sarah Jane wrote, oh, that's Sarah Jane Block.
right,
They just know it as Sarah Jane, and actually, a lot of people believe Sarah Jane is the first and last name.
right,
I mean, when I was growing up, I figured that was literally her name.
yeah,
And it kind of reminded me. So this story kind of reminded me. If you've ever watched Supernatural, there's this one particular episode. I know you haven't really watched it that much, but there's this one episode where they go to this house and they've passed this story for so long about this ghost. I think his name was Mordecai.
oh yeah, Mordecai,
That they
yeah,
kept passing this story so much that they actually invented this
right,
ghost.
I remember
And
that one.
anytime the story changed, the ghost itself would change.
Right.
So I don't know if it's quite possibly could be one of that situation. Like, we've passed this story for so long and, people are actually fearful of it that we kind of created this.
Right.
I mean, some people believe that is a very possibility that you can create these things
Absolutely.
by, creating the fear and just
well,
the story itself.
and to me, like, and I've always said this, like, words have power. Your mind
Yes.
has power, especially, give you a great example, sick people. Like, people can, to me personally, and this is just my opinion, but people can will themselves sick. Like, if they continuously think they're sick, what was it called, hypochondria?
Yeah.
Like, those people can literally will themselves sick.
And at the same time, people can will themselves better with,
Correct.
like, placebos.
Right. So obviously, with that kind of mind power, it's not a crazy idea to consider that something can manifest from your mind, from the words that you speak.
Right.
So I can agree with that.
So obviously, we know this story is simply that, a story,
Yeah.
because Miss Sarah Jane Block lived to the beautiful age of 98, and
Yeah.
we can only wish to live that long.
Yes.
But as far as the actual road itself, what is your take on it?
So, like I said, I think that somebody could have died down there, and it could have been a mom, and she could have hung herself, and her baby could have died. But I don't believe her name was Sarah Jane. I think that is just an auditory disruption that was twisted throughout the years, and that's how that happened. But as far as the story, especially with things back then, I could see it happening. Like, it's a possibility. I'm not saying it's real. I'm not saying it's fake. I'm just saying it is a major possibility. But it's always wise to not take anybody's advice for it. Go out and see it yourself.
Right.
Give us your opinion. Please be respectful.
So, yes, always be respectful, even if you go to her grave, because, you can actually go to her grave. I would still ask that you be respectful, as always, if you visit any of these places we are talking about. Only leave footsteps. If you see trash and it's not yours, pick it up.
Yeah.
Simple as that. But as far as this story, I think it is exactly what I said with Supernatural. I think somebody just ran with this story and created this monster all on their own, which is why some people will say, yes, it's true. Others will say, absolutely not. I think it's one of those things of, if you believe in it, you're going to see something.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you're not going to get anything.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's something that we've personally talked about being receptive, because there are people out there who will walk into a haunted house and be like, oh, there's nothing here. And then there will be people that see stuff and feel stuff and hear stuff. There's a point where the reason that they're doing that is because they are receptive to it.
right.
Like, you have to be receptive to believe that there is something else. And if you don't, you're not going to feel anything or hear anything or see anything. That's my opinion.
But
Now,
I think people can be changed to believers.
yeah, no, absolutely. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there comes a point where either it's going to make you, if you're supposed to see it, it's going to make you see it.
Right.
So,
But anyways, that's our opinion. Obviously, just our opinion. You let us know what you think. How can they do that?
well, I'm glad you asked, because I now know this.
Okay.
All you have to do is your own, I guess, YouTube as well.
YouTube as well. We
Okay.
actually just started YouTube.
Okay, so YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. All you have to do is hit @HTT. Listen closely.
Right.
It'll take you right to her.
Or
Send her an email at httlistenclosely@gmail.com.
good job.
See, I'm getting better.
You're getting better. If you do follow me on just one of these social media platforms, you're not guaranteed to get everything. I don't post everything on everything. So actually my TikTok has a bunch of pictures or videos that I made with this hashtag iPhone photo editing hack.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, it actually really is. So if you don't know what that is, you should probably be on TikTok first off. But don't get addicted.
Or if you just have an iPhone, which
Right.
I don't.
But yeah, so those were pictures from different cemeteries that we visited that I just happened to edit the photo and they make them look really cool.
Yeah.
So not everything you're going to see on TikTok you're going to see on Facebook or Instagram because those are only on TikTok. Instagram also has certain little memes or things I find funny that you won't see anywhere else. But I try to at least give you all the information I find. So these websites that I have talked about tonight, I will be posting them on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere I can to let you know that I did my research. This is where I got my sources. Yes, one of them is Wikipedia.
Oh, so, and I wanted to bring, because obviously, so we're recording this on Father's Day. So I wanted to bring you something kind of funny. So one of your members, your audience, saw me at Walmart.
Okay.
And they came up to me and they said, hey, because I was wearing your Listen Closely shirt.
Okay.
And they said, hey, I subscribe to that podcast. And I said, well, that's cool. That's awesome. Like, I'm glad you're listening to that's my wife that does it. I'm actually the producer behind it. And we started talking and he said, you know, it's weird because I figured that you were going to be kind of creepy because you do a ghost podcast. And I was like, no, I'm about as goofy as they come, tell you the truth.
You are. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I can be a little creepy.
Sometimes.
I mean, it depends on my moods. But if you see us out and about, definitely stop us, talk to us. We are not creepy people.
We are not.
We are actually very friendly. And I don't know if you know this. You probably do from this podcast, but I like to talk.
Me too.
That's probably why we're so good together and why we do what we do. If you don't know, the reason this one is so late is because we are working on a home studio.
Yes.
Which is very close to being done. So I do apologize for this delay on this episode, but things are looking up and will only get better.
Absolutely.
All right. So if that's all you have for this story, anything else you want to add?
Y'all, like I said, y'all be respectful, but y'all go check out Sarah Jane Road. If you already have a story of Sarah Jane Road, let us know. Tell us your experience. But other than that, I mean, y'all go check it out. Be respectful and go check it out and tell us what you find.
And as always, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any podcast, you can please just hit that subscribe button, give us 5 stars, leave us a review to let us know how we are doing. And if you can only do one thing, we ask that you do this, and that's listen closely.